Legends of the Force has been fully spoiled. Yes, I'm technically a week late, but we've had everybody else go over the stuff. I'm going to go over pretty much the same amount of stuff, or the same stuff in general. It is time for us to take a look at things. Thankfully, due to the leak, not thankfully for the leak, but thankfully for this response, we did manage to get the entire set revealed last week, and that's going to give players an opportunity to check out, to test. I've done a little bit of testing myself to see what the decks that are going to be good coming out of the 5th set will be for the Galactic Championship. And the only reason why it's as important as it is because it's the World Championship for Star Wars Unlimited. If this were a regional or a sector, it would probably be just as important, but because it is the Galactic Championship, it's that tier above, our final point of interaction for competitive in Star Wars Unlimited, and every player is going to need as much information as they're going to be able to have in order to be able to realistically get an idea of what's going on, because 2 weeks is just not enough time. So poo-poo on the people that leaked this, poo-poo on the people that kept this without saying anything. Yay for the rest of us in order to be able to actually get some stuff going. So per usual, we're not going to go over every single card, but there are 4 leaders remaining that we will go over, maybe not necessarily in a ridiculous amount of detail, but I will do the leader, the cards that are relevant from their aspect, and then a couple of other extra individual things that are coming out thereafter. So, HARK! We are here. It is time to check out the rest of the decent cards for Star Wars Unlimited Set 5, Legends of the Force, now officially spoiled, StarWarsUnlimited.com, and also SWUDB.com. So we're going to jump right to it with our Vigilance Villainy Rare Leader. Starting off, information we were given before by sources that shouldn't have had said information were correct that we are going to get, or we did get, a Vigilance Villainy Kylo Ren and a Heroism Aggression Rey. We're going to start with the Kylo Ren. We're not done yet. This is our Vigilance Villainy Rare Leader, First Order and Force traits. As an action, you can exhaust Kylo Ren, discard a card from your hand. If you discarded an upgrade this way, draw a card. As an epic action, if you control 7 or more resources, you can deploy this leader as a 5/5. This is number 001 out of 264 in LOF. And the flip side here is Sentinel with the 5/5 Force and First Order traits. When deployed, play any number of upgrades from your discard pile on this unit, one at a time, paying their costs. Kylo Ren is 7-cost leader. We know that 7-cost leaders not named Darth Vader are pretty tough to play. We've seen some relative competitive success for Yoda, but realistically, it's only the 7-drop Vader that has done as well as it has, and that's because Vader comes out as a 5/8. Kylo Ren coming out as a 5/5 Sentinel, that's not great. But you do have an engine that provides you an opportunity to make Kylo Ren much better than what he would have been otherwise, because on your leader side, you're using one action a turn to discard upgrades from your hand. So in blue, we already know that there's going to be a Kylo Ren's lightsaber. There's Brutal Traditions. In Villainy, we've got Darth Revan's lightsaber. There's the Grievous bike, a bunch of other things. But you can mix this with a couple of other colors to do some interesting stuff. Red for Fallen Lightsaber, something like Ruthlessness. You can go with green in order to be able to get General's Blade, which you wouldn't get the bonus, but it'd still be a 3-cost 3/3. Technically the same thing if you're going to try to use the Darksaber or any of those protection things that you have that's available to you. And then yellow, I think, is the most interesting combination because you get to discard things like Snapshot Reflexes that only cost 1, so you can do 2 other on your 7-resource flip, 3-cost upgrades, or even Constructed Lightsaber if you want to use that, to be able to do some interesting stuff with Kylo Ren. And then as discarding the upgrades in your hand, you get to draw cards to replace them and push your opponent into making the first actions first. So there is a tempo aspect to this in order to be able to do things before your opponents are ready. And then on the flip side, you get this big unit that comes out. There's a fun little combo. I'll go over it really quickly. Basically, if you can equip 2 of the Constructed Lightsabers and 1 Snapshot Reflexes, you have 2/3, 2/3, 1/1. That's 5/7 coming onto Kylo Ren, which puts him at a 10/12. But he's got Raid 4, and if you Marchion Row the turn before, he'll have Raid 8, and you can throw 18 damage at your opponent's base in a single flip of your leader because Snapshot Reflexes allows you to attack with the unit when it happens. So you do your first 2 lightsabers first, then your Snapshot Reflexes afterwards. That's 7 resources total. roll. 18 damage to base is a huge swing. Very few decks will be able to survive that on 7. You can try to bamboozle your opponents in a way to be able to do that. And honestly, that really is going to be the only way that Kylo Ren is successful, not specifically the combination raid, but you do need to end your action with Kylo Ren with snapshot reflexes so he can attack and not be immediately removed by Rival's Fall, Bamboozle, have the other things fall off like Power Failure or just Exhausted, any of the other different things. So you do need those defenses up for Kylo Ren. I'm not convinced that this is going to be a good leader, but it will be an interesting way to present a blowout leader to opponents, something that Grievous should have been able to do, but we're going to use it with Kylo Ren, and he's going to, famously from the Star Wars movies, use 1,000 different lightsabers. Speaking of lightsabers, we have Kylo Ren's lightsaber. 2-cost Vigilance Villainy upgrade attached to a non-vehicle unit. If attached unit is a Force unit, it gains. This unit can't be exhausted by enemy card abilities. +1 power, +3 health. It is unique, a rare, number 40 out of 264 in LOF. Kylo Ren's lightsaber on Kylo Ren. It doesn't even need Kylo Ren synergy. You just put it on a Force unit, and it means it can't be exhausted. So the exhausting part of Bamboozle won't stop Kylo Ren, but removing the upgrades will. However, things happen in the order of operations on the card, so the exhaust would happen first. Kylo Ren's lightsaber will protect you from that exhaustion before it goes back to your hand. 2-cost, only 1 power, but you do get the extra health, so there is some stuff you can work with that. I think the lightsaber strategy is pretty interesting. We'll see what people come up with. Blue-yellow, I think, is going to be the biggest strength for Kylo Ren. Next up, we have Always Chew. This is a 4-cost Vigilance Villainy Sith event. Choose 2 friendly, unique Sith units. If you do, give 2 shield tokens and 2 experience tokens to each chosen unit, then defeat all other friendly units. This is a legendary, number 42 out of 264 in LOF. So this is a build around event, much like the Forces with Me is build around Force, or now there are 2 of them is built around any trait spread across your stuff. Always Chew is going to present you with an opportunity to do some very interesting stuff. If you can get an early turn Sith unit, now there are 2 of them, get your late turn Sith unit, and then Always Chew, you can end up having a really good power bonus worth of stuff. And if you have other things that have benefits based upon when defeated, you can actually end up activating those before your opponent is ready to see those activated. Always Chew is going to be a very interesting card. Don't know if it's going to be a very competitive card, but this is actually the type of design that I would love to see out of Legendaries. Not something that's absolutely mandatory to run in every blue deck, not something that is absolutely garbage, something that's in between a side grade or build around strategy that provides players the option of doing cool things and fun things and thematic things in Star Wars, which for our game is supposed to be unlimited, but currently being very limited. Next up, we have the art piece that everybody was really waiting to see, the Tragedy of Plagueis. This is a 5-cost Vigilance Villainy Learned event. Choose a friendly unit. For this phase, it can't be defeated by having no remaining HP. An opponent chooses a unit they control, defeat that unit. This is a rare, number 43 out of 264 in LOF. This is Power of the Dark Side mixed with the Chirrut leader ability of not being able to be defeated with no remaining HP. So you can slam into one of your opponent's units if they have any units remaining, or protect your units from being defeated by your opponent's damage stuff, or minuses, which is also an interesting way. And when those effects go away, you can choose the order if you are the one with the initiative. So you want your opponent's effects to fall off for temporary stuff, and then your effect to fall off afterwards. It'll be interesting to see how people use this. This is one of those weird cards that requires a specific set of circumstances to be pretty interesting or pretty good. We don't know if it's exactly going to do anything for us, but somebody's going to figure out if this thing does something interesting. And it's a meme card, at least. It is the Tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise. It's not a story the Jedi would teach you, that kind of fun stuff that we always expect from prequel movie memes. Next up, we have Secretive Sage. This is a 2-cost Vigilance Ground unit, 2 power, 2 health, Force and Fringe traits, shielded. This is a common, number 61 out of 264. The only reason why I present this card to you is because it is a blue, crafty smuggler. That's actually honestly good in of itself, and it's got the Force trait, which means it's one of the strongest trait synergies in the entire game. Secretive Sage, actually quite a good card. And last in blue here, we have Axe Woves. This is a personal thing for me. Accomplished Warrior, 3 cost, Vigilance, Ground Unit, 2 power, 2 health, Mandalorian Trooper. It is shielded. This unit gets +1/+1 for each upgrade on him. A rare number 62 out of 264 in LOF. He basically comes in as a 3 cost shielded 3/3 because that is an upgrade. If you put more upgrades on him, he gets more things. If you work him with Gar Saxon, he ends up being on deploy a shielded 4/3, which can be pretty good on 3 cost. Lots of interesting stuff that are associated with, I love this character as a whole. I believe his name is Simon Cassanides. He's an excellent actor. Love all the stuff that he's been. Emil Bakshi from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., incredible character. Axe Woves here, though, slots right into blue Mandalorian decks. I'm really glad he doesn't have a heroism or villainy trait because it means that he can be put into any of the decks, and we'll have to see what other Mandalorian support we can get, potentially in Secrets of Power, before rotation hits and wipes out half of the Mandalorian reps that do exist in the game. Moving on to aggression, we'll circle back to command here in just a minute. We have our next leader, which, as before, we knew was going to be Rey because we knew Kylo, and Rey is here and she is nobody. In fact, the subtitle is Rey Nobody. Aggression, heroism, force, resistance, traded leader. As an action, you can exhaust the leader. If you have played a non-force card this phase, deal 1 damage to a unit. As an epic action on 7 resources, you can flip her into a 6/8, which when deployed, you may discard your hand. If you do, draw 2 cards. This is number 12 out of 264 in LOF, a rare. I don't really understand what the goal of this is. The cards we know that synergize with this are going to be force events. So you can do things like Force Throw, It Binds All Things, stuff like that. That's going to be able to do things. The Force is With Me, I believe, is also a force event that allows you to do damage, which could be a pretty good combination there with flipping the other direction. Whereas the old Rey was blue using a red base, you can be a red Rey using a blue base. The action here is okay, but requires you to not progress your own board state with units and requires you to use non-unit cards to be able to get this ping damage off. And it's only to a unit, it's not to a base. So you're not progressing the goal of annihilating your opponent's base. Then flipping, when deployed, you may discard your hand. If you do draw 2 cards, you're sacrificing potentially a lot of cards or no cards, in which case you likely aren't going to get the effect. I believe you must have at least 1 card to discard in order to be able to draw the 2 cards. So if you don't like the 1 or 2 cards that are in your hand, you can replace them with 2 new cards. But a 7 flip 6/8 is technically stronger than Vader and our strongest 7 flip leader, but a 6/8 vanilla isn't actually progressing anything for you, and potentially by the point you get to 7, unless you are actively controlling your opponent's units that are on the board and they haven't dealt a ton of damage to you, you could be pretty screwed here before you even get to flip your leader. So I'm struggling with this version of the character. The old Rey was really good, very played with Tarkin Town and Data Vault as blue-red and blue-green decks. This Rey, I just don't see it. It's not here. It's not a good leader. And honestly, all of the aggression leaders in this set are pretty bad in terms of what they want to be doing. Third Sister might be the strongest, but aggression is really rough in terms of leaders and what are available to them. So let's move past Rey as a leader and check out Rey as a unit, because we have Rey with Palpatine's Power, a 5 cost aggression heroism ground unit, 5 power, 5 health, force, Jedi, resistance. When you draw this card during your action phase, if you control a red leader or base, you may reveal this card from your hand. If you do, deal 2 damage to a unit and 2 damage to a base. This is a rare, number 148 out of 264 in LOF. Red likes to draw cards. There are a lot of red draw card events. What you really want is something that's going to be consistently on your board drawing you cards. So potentially if you have the Force and you key out a Mundi drawing into this, that's going to give you a lot of benefit because you're dealing 2 damage to the unit, 2 damage to the base, and then also drawing this card to be able to use on 5, which doesn't require the Force in order to be able to do its effect. But it is also just a 5 cost 5/5 vanilla Force unit, which could be good, could be bad. I'm hesitant. I think the art on this is actually pretty good. David Buisson, absolutely incredible. Buisson, technically, I believe is how the name is pronounced. Absolutely incredible artist, has done Rey an immense amount of justice for these cards. Unfortunately, the text on these cards have not done the art justice. Hoping this is better than I think it is. Drawing cards is tough. There are strategies that do draw cards, but they're technically not often not drawing specific cards. So you got to worry about how you're drawing cards in order to be able to get this Rey into your hand. Next, we have Sin Dralik, I believe is how the name is pronounced. Esteemed Blade Master, an 8 cost aggression heroism ground unit, 5 power, 6 health, Force Jedi Republic traits, When played, you may play a lightsaber upgrade from your hand for free on this unit. If you do, ready him. This is a legendary, number 150 out of 264 in LOF. Expensive card for low stats, 5 power, 6 health, but you're effectively getting a free 2 or 3 cost lightsaber attached to this unit that can also attack the same round it comes into play. That is actually quite good, especially if you're able to use good lightsabers that provide a good bonus to the character that's using them. Throw a constructed lightsaber on Sin, you can activate those restore of that. You throw a Jedi lightsaber, you get to throw that ---- onto opponent's unit. Throw a General's Blade onto this if you're running red-green. He is a Jedi, you get the Force bonus there. Lots of different and interesting stuff that is associated with this card. I think this is a very good card, but it is also a very expensive card. An 8 cost is going to be a ginormous investment, hoping that you don't die before you get to this point. You'll notice there's a theme about conversations with this game. If you survive the turns, you're probably already winning in the first place. That's something to also consider. Next up, we have Knight's Saber, great card to pair with Sindralig. We have a 2 cost upgrade here, aggression, heroism, attached to a Jedi non-vehicle unit, so you cannot attach this to a Jedi vector. Plus 3 power, plus 2 health, a common, number 151 out of 264 in LOF. Perfect draft card. You're going to have a lot of Jedi, especially in red, that are going to be able to do some interesting stuff. Gaining 3 power and 2 health for 2, quite good. You just have to watch out for upgrade removal, which there's not a lot in this set. So in terms of limited, drafted, sealed, this is quite a good card. In terms of regular Premier play, I still think this is a good card because it does demand that 1-2 cost upgrade removal to be able to remove this from your unit. Otherwise, you're going to get blasted by something that has a lot of power and a lot of health, and it's not going to be fun for the person getting attacked. In terms of villainy, we have here Grand Inquisitor, Your Right to Be Afraid, 3 cost aggression villainy ground units, 3 power, 4 health, Force Imperial and Inquisitor traits. Hidden, raid 1, other friendly Inquisitor units also gain hidden, a legendary, number 132 out of 264 in LOF. I like this card a lot. It provides your Inquisitors the ability to bypass the attacks that are going to be coming at them the turn they come into play. He himself has hidden, so he gets to survive as long as he's not removed from the board through any of the other myriads of ways that he can be removed. And having that raid 1 means that when you refresh him with the Grand Inquisitor leader from set 1, he's still doing 4 damage on the attack. That's pretty good. Combine this guy with your 5th brother, your 7th sister, and a couple of the other Inquisitor units that are going to be floating around, one of which we'll talk about later. You have an opportunity to do some really cool stuff with the way that Inquisitors gain the hidden keyword. Also, Grand Inquisitor himself, the leader, is an Inquisitor unit, which means that when you flip, you can be protected from being attacked, which for a 6 resource flip 3/6, that's very important in order to be able to do the things that you want to do. This is a great card. I think this is going to see a lot of play in any deck that wants to have the Inquisitors in them, have this raid, have the 3 cost 3/4 ready and available. I think this is probably one of the better legendaries we've seen in the set. Next up, we have Paz Vizsla, Unyielding Warrior. This is the 5 cost double aggression ground unit. 3 power, 6 health, Mandalorian. This unit gets +2/+0 for each damage on him. A rare, number 153 out of 264 in LOF. The Clan Ren Rescuers are Blue Hero. The Armorer is Blue Hero. One of our Mandalorian units is Blue Hero. We have a Bo-Katan that is double red. We have a Bo-Katan that is red-black. We have other clan characters that are red and blue. Paz Vizsla being double red means that it completely cuts you from the ability to synergize with your other blue and yellow Mandos that do exist, or green, right? I'm glad the character is in the game. I really hate the way aspects are done in this game. Or not even, I like the concept of aspects. I don't like the way that some units are designed to synergize with those aspects, because there are a lot of interesting double red cards that do mesh very well with the Mandalorians, and you get super grit with Paz Vizsla, but you don't get to run any of the Mandalorians in any of the other colors unless you're taking a hit with the aspect penalty. To which the response is, well, twin sons. Correct. 1. You get 1 Paz Vizsla. In terms of better cards, we have Cartel Interceptor, 3 cost aggression space unit, 2 power, 3 health, raid 2, a common, number 157 out of 264 in LOF, Underworld Vehicle Fighter traits. Y'all know what the traits are. This is very good with Marchion Row. This is also going to be very good in Cad Bane because it gives you the opportunity to attack with a 4 attack unit into something else that needs to be able to be defeated on the next round. It still triggers Cad Bane's ability, and because it has raid, it doubles up on the raid with the Marchion Row that you're going to be dropping on 6. So this goes from a 4-3 on attack to a 6-3 on attack. That is huge, especially for a deck that likely needs more space units. Does this replace Mist Hunter? Absolutely not. But it combos with giving you the option to be able to play different things. So instead of running 3 Mist Hunters, you could potentially run 2 Mist Hunters and 2 Cartel Interceptors. That's effectively up to you on how you want to build the deck. I do actually have a Cad Bane deck sitting on the side that has been upgraded with some of these things, and to be honest, I really like the way this Cartel Interceptor fits into the deck. And then last, we have Lightsaber Throw, 2 cost aggression tactic event. Discard a lightsaber card from your hand. If you do, deal 4 damage to a ground unit and draw a card. This is an uncommon, number 176 out of 264 in LOF. At its base, you take a lightsaber and 2 resources, throw it at your opponent's ground unit for 4 damage, and draw a card. So it refills itself. You dump the lightsaber into your graveyard, into your discard pile, which can be recurred by Kylo Ren, or even a Fine Edition, which is a card we saw from set 3. It refills itself with the card. So there's some interesting synergies here with Kylo Ren, a Fine Edition, but there's also an event we'll see later on that synergizes with lightsabers and Inquisitors in your discard pile, which makes this even more viable. This is a fun card. It does require a very specific deck build, which is really what we want to see with some of these cards, where it's again, like we talked about Legendary, not mandatory in every deck, not garbage tier, throw it in the recycling bin because it's bad and you're never going to see play. It's a side grade that does something really good for a specific deck that's an uncommon that's going to help you do some interesting stuff. And in Limited, just chuck a lightsaber to kill one of your opponent's units. They mostly are only going to have 4 health element anyway, right? Next up, in our unrevealed leaders section, we have Yellow, our yellow villainy leader for this set, as well as a couple of yellow cards. Not as many better yellow cards that were revealed. I think what really happened was they front-loaded most of Cunning's better cards, which, you know, Cunning always has good cards. But we'll talk about each of these here in just a moment. We have Barriss Offee. We have become villains. This is our Cunning Villainy Rare leader. Force Jedi Republic traits. As an action, you can exhaust her and use the Force. Play an event from your hand. It costs 1 less, so events matter. Strategy here. Epic action, 6 cost, flip into a 4/7. So number 13, 264 in LOF. The flip goes into action, use the Force, play an event from your hand. It costs 1 less. So on the front side, you're playing 1 event less. On the unit side, you can play multiple because it's not on attack. It's not single per turn action. As long as you can generate the Force, you can do this multiple times. So this is probably one of the better leaders that have come out of the set, although I'm not entirely sure if it's going to be the best leader. But theoretically, if you imagine, you could realistically play Force throws for free using this character, because you're going to want to run a lot of Force units because you need the Force, and then having a lot of Force units on the board means you're going to be able to Force throw. So I don't imagine that FFG is going to ban Force throw, suspend it, whatever they want to call it, because there are 2 leaders that seem to be designed around using it in their decks, Barriss and Rey. 6 costs, 6 flip, 4/7 leader. It's average stats for a 6. I think people who really like using events and are cool with using multiple Force units are going to really enjoy playing this leader. Will it be competitive? That's actually a very good question, and one I don't think I can answer at this point. There's no obvious downside to this character other than having to use the Force specifically as a mechanic, which will be limited to just set 5, but who knows? Events matters decks can be pretty significant, and as long as you can continue being able to get the Force, it's going to be pretty easy to pay 1 less for most of your events for any given round. Next up, we have Corrupted Lightsaber, one of our lightsabers that we have here. Pretty sure this is Afra in the back. 2 cost, Cunning Villainy, Corrupted Saber upgrade, attached to a non-vehicle unit. If attached unit is a Force unit, it gains on attack. The defender gains -2/0 for this attack. +2 power, +1 health, a common, number 187 out of 264 in LOF. This goes pretty well with the Grand Inquisitor strategy from this set, because then you can stack multiple minuses on the characters, or even just making it so that you don't take as much damage back when you attack into something, and you still have a big chunk of health, your health plus the 1 health from this, and then a big chunk of power. It's an okay card. It's going to be pretty decent and limited because it's going to allow you to control your opponent's units, and of course, Cunning gets, you know, the good stuff. This isn't the best thing, so it's not as memey as we could really talk about, but it is one of those things that this is probably going to be seeing a lot of play in Draft and Sealed. Constructed, not entirely sure, probably not. Next, we have generic Cunning cards, and the two that we're going to go over that I did have of notice here are 2 new yellow creatures, the only 2 yellow creatures that exist in the entire game so far. But first off, we have a 2-cost Cunning ground unit, Lothcat, one of my favorite creatures in Star Wars. 2 power, 1 health. It's a creature. When played and when defeated, you may exhaust a ground unit. This is a common, number 207 out of 264 in LOF. And our second one is a charging Philac, a 4-cost Cunning ground unit, 3 power, 4 health, creature, ambush, hidden, a common, number 210 out of 264 in LOF. So you can stick these in Kanan if you want and be able to use the Pounce ability, which is, I believe it was 1 cost. 1 or 2 cost, doesn't really matter, plus 4 power attack with a creature. So your Lothcat's attacking for a 6 if it survives, and your charging Philac is attacking for a 7 if it survives. That's pretty significant. However, because Kanan is heroism, we actually also have another heroism creature, the Volptex. These are the crystal critters from crates. 2-cost heroism ground unit, 3 power, 2 health, creature, hidden, 245 out of 264, a common in LOF. If you pull Kanan as part of your limited pool, these guys are going to be the ones you're going to want to be pulling. You're going to want to be pulling the Loth Wolves. You're going to want to be pulling these Volptexes, excuse me, and then choosing either red or yellow depending on which good creatures you get. The Lothcat, the Charging Philac, or the Frynok. The Wampa is a reprint in this set, so you could potentially see that, and the Tukata. So either blue red or blue yellow. This supports either one. It does have hidden, which means it can't be attacked, and then you could do a big chunk attack with that Pounce. Creatures could be pretty interesting, especially if you combine that with the Curious Flock, which we have talked about before. Very not high on this card. However, I think it is uniquely good in Kanan because you can throw the shield on it, or is at least uniquely good with the yellow creature package because you can use that Pounce on this, and basically whatever power you put it at, add +4, and it's going to be a huge attack to your opponent, which can be pretty good. It's not going to be the highest level of competitive, but it can potentially take some games off your opponents if they're unprepared to deal with a swarm of porgs or a crystal critter or a charging rhino thing or a Lothcat. Last batch of cards we're going to be going over here. Everything has been released, but this is just stuff that I'm going to cover as part of the review process of this channel. We have our last leader, which is Anakin Skywalker. We have a couple of things from Green. We have one thing from Villainy. We have a combination of characters that are going to be pretty interesting in this. And then one final creature that comes out that might be useful for a creature deck. But let's get started with Anakin Skywalker, Tempted by the Dark Side. This is our heroism rare leader, Force Jedi Republic traits, as all Republic Jedi seem to have, because of course they should. As an action, exhaust the leader, use the Force, play a Villainy non-unit card from your hand, ignoring its aspect penalties. It flips on 5 into a 4/6, which has action, use the Force, play a Villainy non-unit card from your hand, ignoring its aspect penalties. This is number 18 out of 264, our final leader for the set in LOF, a rare. Anakin here is supposed to be the combination of the not having the primary aspect on it, the style aspect of a specific color. You have access to Villainy non-units, so events and upgrades. And that's pretty good for what this character can do, especially if you can keep generating the Force. The strongest build of Anakin Skywalker, I believe, is going to be blue, because you're going to want to back yourself up with blue heroism's really good units that have the Sentinel and the Restore, and things like Obi-Wan and Luke that can back you up with their ability to defend and reduce units. And then you have the legendary blue Anakin unit that when you do end up having heroism and villainy cards in your discard pile, you can give 2 units -3/3 or 1 unit -6/-6 when you play him. So it's a backup Luke for what potentially could be done with that set. And then remember, it's non-units. So you can't use units, but you can use things like Power of the Dark Side or Overwhelming Barrage or Death Field or Forced Lightning, any of those other things. Anything that has a villainy aspect on it, you're going to ignore all the aspect penalties. So even if you play blue, you can still play Overwhelming Barrage using this character's ability to be able to make it so that it just costs 5, ignoring its entire aspect penalty of the card itself. So this is a very good leader. It flips on 5 into a 4/6, which is very strong. 4/6 leaders don't always do incredibly well, but when they do good, they do good. And because Anakin does have that 4 power, you could even throw something like a Fallen Lightsaber onto him, utilizing his ability, and then he's going to be able to pump up into a 7/9. That's going to be very hard to take down unless your opponent just defeats it with something that says defeat a unit. So, speaking of villainy cards you could potentially use, we have Consumed by the Dark Side. This is actually a very interesting card. 2-cost villainy force event. Give 2 experience tokens to a unit and then deal 2 damage to it. This is a common number 239 out of 264 in LOF, featuring one of my favorite Jedi, Quinlan Vos, during his Dark Disciple phase as part of that book. This is a very interesting card because it has that similar flow to Paige Tico does, but instead of being just a vehicle that she is piloting, this is any of your units that you're going to give the tokens to first and then deal damage. So it won't kill itself, and bare minimum, it's going to be able to get 2 extra power. But if you have something that has like Grit or even Paz Vizsla, which has the double Grit, where it's getting +2 for each damage on it, you can end up having a lot of extra damage on characters and a lot of extra power to be able to use their Grit to knock things out, which I think this card is going to see a lot of plays in unit-based villainy decks that have that Grit strategy, or at least things that have very high health that can afford to take the extra damage. Kira probably could use this pretty well. We know that the First Light has a pretty decent strategy of doing that, even going all the way back to set 1 with the Scout Bike Pursuer, throwing 2 experience tokens and 2 extra damage onto it. That's going to be a very powerful Scout Biker. Following up with our Inquisitor strategy, or at least theme, we have Flight of the Inquisitor, a 2-cost villainy tactic event. You may return a Force unit and lightsaber upgrade from your discard pile to your hand. This is number 240 out of 264 and uncommon in LOF. Not limited to Inquisitors, which is quite good. You can take any Force unit and any lightsaber from your discard pile to your hand, and allows you to recur them. When we have things like Lightsaber Throw that have you discard a lightsaber to deal damage, you can use Flight of the Inquisitor to recur that back to your hand. You have the ability to bring back any of your Force units that have been dying to be able to continue getting those Force tokens back to you once per Force, obviously. And that's pretty decent recursion for a 2-cost event. Next up, we have 8th Brother Hunt Together, 6-cost command villainy ground units, 5 power, 7 health, Force, Imperial, and Inquisitor traits. Ambush. When you play another unit, you may use the Force. If you do, give a unit +2/+2 for the phase. An uncommon number 87 out of 264 in LOF. This is a better Imperial unit than it is Inquisitor unit because we have Inquisitors spread across 3 different aspects right now: aggression, cunning, and command, so red, yellow, green, and not really a good enough synergy to be able to mesh those together to do the proper thing. I am surprised that there is not a Marok in this set. We did get the 8th Brother to finish out the Rebels Inquisitors, but we're still missing 4th Sister from Obi-Wan Kenobi, and we're still missing 9th Sister from Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor, and then Marok from the Ahsoka series. So I don't know if they didn't have enough room to be able to slot those cards in there, or if they didn't feel it was necessary, but needless to say, 8th Brother here, a green Inquisitor, which does not really mesh with any of our current Inquisitor sets, but it does mesh with some of the Imperial strategies that we have, and it does back up based upon you using the Force, and because it is a Force unit, you can gain the Force with your Force bases. Next up, we have the Inquisitor's Lightsaber, also a green card. 2-cost, command villainy upgrade, attached to a non-vehicle unit. Attached unit gains, while attacking a Force unit, this unit gets +2/+0. +1 power, +3 health, a common number 90 out of 264 in LOF. Another one of those things that it doesn't specifically mesh. It does kind of mesh with the Inquisitor strategy, but it doesn't specifically mesh with what Inquisitors are trying to do or restrict it to them. It's basically just throw this lightsaber on any of your non-vehicle units, and if you're attacking a Force unit, you don't even need to be a Force unit. You get +2/+0, which puts you at +3/+3 from this specific upgrade. Decent card. Don't know if it's going to see a lot of play. It lends itself a little bit more to the Imperial strategy, as I said before, than it does the Inquisitor strategy, especially because it is green and not red or yellow, but we are here. Next up, we've got 3 characters from one of my favorite sets of episodes from the Clone Wars, the Mortis trilogy, and we have the Mortis family themselves, starting with the Sun, embodiment of darkness. 7 cost villainy ground units, 6 power, 8 health, Force trait. While the Force is with you, each friendly unit gets +2/+0. This is a rare number 237 out of 264 in LOF. An expensive unit, but if the Force is with you, which it can be very easily, all of your units are getting +2 power, which showcases the Sun shoving his aggression into Anakin and forcing him to become the evil that everybody knows that Anakin is going to become as part of that Mortis trilogy of episodes. You should go watch it if you haven't already. That's the dark side. What about the light side? We have the Daughter, embodiment of light. 5 cost heroism ground units, 4 power, 6 health, Force trait. When damage is dealt to your base, you may use the Force. If you do, heal 2 damage from your base. This is a rare number 252 out of 264 in LOF. While the Sun is about dealing extra damage and being aggressive and pushing your opponent closer and closer towards death, the Daughter is more about defending yourself and healing your base when your opponent is dealing damage to your base to offset some of the stuff that's happening to you. As long as you can continue to get the Force, you are able to heal your base each time it takes damage. And then finally, we have the Father, maintaining balance. This is an 8 cost ground unit, aspectless, 5 power, 10 health, Force trait. When you use the Force, you may deal 1 damage to this unit. If you do, the Force is with you. This is a legendary number 260 out of 264 in LOF. While the other one wants you to have the Force, the Son wants you to have the Force, the Daughter wants you to spend the Force, the Father allows you to maintain both of those at pretty much any given time, so long as he is on the board. Use the Force, deal him a damage, get the Force back so you can continue doing that with other things. This is an interesting strategy in combination with Avar Kriss, which could potentially allow her to come out with, you basically come out a turn earlier than you would necessarily. The Father is an interesting design, making it so that the mechanic that you're trying to keep in this set is a lot easier to keep by dealing the damage to him, but 1 piece of removal messes up that whole combination. So despite the fact that it's a cool card and a cool ability, it's probably not going to see a lot of play, but the Mortis family is here and is in the game, and if I were to pick one of these to play, it's definitely going to be the Sun, because I do like my Lord effects, and when you're able to give a bunch of units plus power, your opponent has to make that decision of either kill the Sun or die. Our last card being covered today is this lowly little Minok, a 2 cost command space unit, 2 power, 3 health creature with Overwhelm, a common number 109 out of 264 in LOF. You're probably not going to be using that Overwhelm very often, but in combination with Kanan giving it shields, you can deal extra damage to space units that you wouldn't otherwise be able to handle with just the normal package of creatures that you'd be running in the 5, 6, 7 slot. The Minok is very good because it does provide that early threat to space, and if you can use that extra damage based upon using things like Pounce if you're running green-yellow, just throwing a lightsaber on it, you have a lot of different things you can do with the Minok that might make that Overwhelm come in more handy later on. But it's a little space bat, suckles on your power supply. Not a great thing to have happen. It's kind of annoying, but when there's a bunch of them, it does eventually get out of hand. So there you have it. Those are going to be the most impactful cards that we're likely going to see from this final batch of stuff that's released in Legends of the Force. If you want to see everything, StarWarsUnlimited.com, SWUDB.com, they both have the full set up. Link in the description below if you want to check out SWUDB there with a link directly to the Legends of the Force set. Lots of interesting stuff. After seeing everything, I didn't really see too much that was going to benefit the Cal Kestis deck that I want to build, but I have played a couple games games with it, and it is a leader that I think is going to take people by surprise, and they're going to have to think about their moves a little bit more carefully than the Cal Kestis player would necessarily have to, because they can just go a bunch of damage to face. We'll talk about that in another video. I'll have a deck tech out talking about the options and things that are available to you and what my experience with that deck has been so far. Legends of the Force is a set that is hinging on a mechanic that unfortunately is likely only going to be seen in this one set. I think the coolness of some of the stuff that we've seen with gaining and using the Force is cool, but if other prior mechanics that we've seen, like bounty, like smuggle, like coordinate, like exploit, like piloting, are limited to just the single sets, use the Force is probably going to be one of the worst mechanics, because it does require more than one thing to be good. It is a little worrisome on how good this theme, this mechanic is going to be moving forward, but we did at least get a fair amount of cards that are good independent of the Force strategies, which is smart by the devs, because unfortunately, as our game is played, things that are more generic and less specific end up being a lot better, because they benefit more strategies and can be played more efficiently and more unilaterally than something like a card that comes into play ready if you spend the Force, like Vernestra Row. Those types of examples. So it'll be an interesting set. We're going to start seeing some prestige arts and some showcases, so hopefully those are pretty cool. I need to pull a Cal Kestis showcase. I need to pull a Kanan showcase. I probably need to pull a Kylo showcase, a Snoke showcase if I want to keep my First Order collection complete. All kinds of interesting stuff there, but I've been talking for far longer than I need to, so that's all we have for the video today. Like this video, comment down below what your favorite thing you saw of this video is so far, what you think of the Force mechanic as a whole in the set, what your favorite leader is overall, and what deck you want to build now that we know all the cards going into Legends of the Force, and what you think might be the most dangerous deck coming up with the Galactic Championship in a little over a month. So subscribe to the Star Wars Unlimited channel for all of your Star Wars Unlimited needs. Thank you very much for joining me, folks. Appreciate y'all. Appreciate your patience with this long video. A lot of stuff to have to cover. This is why we reduced the amount of cards to talk about as opposed to talking about everything, because these videos would have been immensely longer if I talked about every single card. Thank you for joining me. Appreciate each and every one of you. We'll see you in the next one, and we'll see you in the stars.